Hey, Riley J2A here with another episode of the Roundup series where I talk about multiple things in regards to the Second Amendment. I don't go into great detail, but I rather just big picture it. This is more intended for those who maybe don't have a lot of time on their hands but still want to stay informed on the Second Amendment. That's what I do here on the Roundup. So, gonna get right into it. Okay, now for the at this point weekly segment, the Oregon ballot measure 114 update. Okay, so in the last roundup, I talked about the fact that there's been multiple lawsuits filed against ballot measure 114, and the state of Oregon rather. Um, well, one of which was filed by Gun Owners of America. Okay, and they were looking for a temporary restraining order against Measure 114 because if you didn't know, when Measure 114 was supposed to go into effect yesterday on the 8th, well, there was a bunch of back and forth. Okay, a federal judge said that he wasn't going to do that, but then the state judge did issue that temporary restraining order. The state of Oregon, their attorney general wanted parts of the ban to be delayed, or parts of the bill to be delayed, and not others. It was a bunch of back and forth, but that doesn't really matter now because the state judge did issue the temporary restraining order against Measure 114. The state of Oregon did appeal this to the Oregon State Supreme Court, in where the Oregon State Supreme Court agreed with the state judge in saying, yeah, okay, this temporary restraining order can remain. So the point at hand is Oregon ballot measure 114 and all of its extreme gun control, okay, magazine capacity limitation, permit to purchase, among other things, did not go into effect on schedule, which would have been yesterday on the 8th. Did not go into effect, has not gone into effect yet. So if you live in Oregon, that's good news. And yeah, it's good news, kind of, okay? It's a small win, but this is a temporary restraining order. This is not going to last long term. So it's a nice small win, but there's a long fight ahead for you if you live in Oregon still. This is, you know, just the beginning still, really. So that's all there really is to say about that. Just a little update. Small win, which is great. So yeah, keep fighting if you live in Oregon. Moving on, though. Okay, now this also seems to be a weekly segment on this show at this point in talking about states that are trying to do extreme things in taking people's rights. Okay, last week we talked about Illinois trying to ban so called assault weapons, semi automatic rifles, is what we're actually talking about. Now, this week we're talking about Michigan. Okay, Michigan is trying to pass a so called assault weapons ban. Okay, in the state of Michigan. And it's unfortunate. Okay, so I'm going to say the same thing I always do in talking about this kind of thing. If you live in Michigan, keep an eye on this. Do your best to fight this. That's really all you can do, right? Additionally, I had the chance to skim through the governor's wish list, agenda, plans, whatever you want to say, upon being reelected. And she's also looking to get red flags passed in the state of Michigan and safe storage requirements in the state of Michigan. Okay, so if you live in Michigan, you got to keep an eye on all this, all the gun control. Of course, it's horrible, all of it. No gun control is good. Um, and this gun control doesn't benefit anybody except criminals. Okay, these states support criminals at this point. Okay, that's where we are, unfortunately. So, like I said, living in Michigan, you got to keep an eye on all this. Do your best to stand against this. This isn't good news, but it just is what it is, right? You got to get out there, try to stand against this in any way you can. So yeah, moving on. Last but not least, okay, so most people in the Second Amendment community probably know by now. Washington State this year, 2022, passed a so-called high-capacity magazine ban. It's really, as we know, a standard capacity magazine ban. Okay, any magazine holding more than 10 rounds is now banned from sale, import, manufacture. Things are grandfathered in, magazines you already had. Um, anyway, our Attorney General here in Washington, Attorney General Ferguson, he was doing a compliance investigation in where there was 25 gun shops that they were basically like sending people in to try and see if they were selling magazines in violation of the new state law. Anyway, one gun shop out of these 25 were found to be selling these magazines in violation of law. Okay, so this shop, I'm not looking at it. I believe, I could be mistaken. I believe it was Federal Way um, Discount Guns and Ammo in Federal Way, Washington. I believe that was it. Anyway, you know, it's hard. This is a really weird situation, right? Because to my understanding, they were selling these magazines like on the shelves. Like they weren't even like, hey, like you need that 11 round magazine. I got in the bag. It wasn't even one of those situations. Like they were on the shelves, from what I understand. So it's really hard to say why they did this. I mean, maybe they just simply thought this wasn't being enforced because it really hasn't been enforced at this time. This is the first major enforcement efforts, as far as I know, of this new law. So, anyway, the point is, this shop was found to be selling them in violation of the law. They're being sued by the state, and the attorney general. Um, they're they're probably done. Okay, they're almost definitely done. They're being sued. I'm not looking at it. I believe the number is like $7,500 per magazine. I could be wrong on that, but it could potentially add up to be a lot of money. It's unclear how many magazines they had in their inventory, but they're being sued. Like I believe it's 7,500 per magazine. Who knows how many they had? It's probably at least 10 or more, right? So that's rough, right? I don't know why they would have done it like this. I can't I can't imagine that this is going to be a win for them in any way. I could be wrong, but I don't see how. They're probably about to be sued out of business based on this, which is unfortunate for them. Like I said, really unclear why they did this. Maybe they have an angle. Maybe it's literally just a fuck off to the state of Washington. It's really hard to say what their thought process was, but it's probably bad for them. Maybe not. Anyway, um, Washington Gun Law did a video. I'm not going to go into detail. You can check that video out if this applies to you. But he basically said this could actually benefit the lawsuits that are challenging this magazine ban. Okay, and those are Sullivan v. Ferguson here in the Western District, and over in the Eastern District is Brunback v. Ferguson. But they're suing on the same grounds, which is challenging the Washington State magazine ban. Okay. Anyway, this could potentially benefit those cases. At least that's what Washington gun law seems to think. And he makes good points. I kind of agree with that as well. It definitely could benefit us. So that could be a win for some of us, but I can't imagine that it's a win for this gun shop. So hard to say why they did it. Anyway, gonna be it for this episode of the Roundup. I hope you can use some of this information. I hope maybe you learned something you didn't know already, which is the goal here. So anyway, gonna get out of here. Goodbye.